Guys, welcome to the malware outbreak lab walkthrough video. I'm going to just walk you through what's expected of you on this lab and how to make your submissions so that you can get credit for the assignment. This one has a scenario. We're dealing with a large enterprise organization experiencing a widespread malware outbreak affecting thousands of endpoint devices. The cybersecurity team must rapidly assess the scope of the incident, evaluate trends, and plan remediation using quantitative analysis. In this lab, you'll use percentages, projections, and reverse percent calculations to analyze the outbreak and support incident response decisions. Fun stuff. The objectives: we want to analyze a malware impact using percentages. We want to interpret the system growth and the reduction trends. We want to apply quantitative reasoning to cybersecurity scenarios. And finally, communicate findings clearly and accurately. All right, so let's see what we got. Percent of affected endpoints. So we have a large enterprise. They manage 49,572 endpoint devices. During a malware outbreak, 17,750 endpoints were flagged for immediate patching. What percentage of endpoints required immediate patching? And they want you to round to 2 decimal places and do not include the percent symbol. First thing you want to notice is rounding to the 2 decimal places and not including the percent symbol. That is an instruction, so we want to make sure that we follow the instructions when we make the submission, especially in this field. Like if you're an analyst or you have to make a report to stakeholders, you want to make sure that your information is accurate and that it's relevant to what's going on. So be sure that you pay attention to detail, like things like they're asking for there. Now, in order to answer this question, what I can give you as a hint is in the lecture video and exercises, assuming that you watch those, we have a formula, right? We know that percent times the base would give us the part. As long as we can recognize in our question what is what, then we can plug into the formula and we should be fine. So in this case, they're asking us to find a percentage, right? At a large enterprise, they want to know during a malware outbreak, what percentage of the endpoints required immediate patching. So they're asking what the percentage is. That kind of tells me what I'm dealing with here. One of these numbers and one of these here is going to represent, something there. It shouldn't be the percent because, that's what they're asking for. So if you can figure all that out, you should be fine with that question there. Percents in general, if you remember what we were dealing with when we started explaining how we can conceptualize what they ask for in these percent questions. Remember, we're dealing with a whole, which is equal to 100%, right? That's what a whole is. Everything that equals the whole portion gives us 100% of that portion. Like if I had $1, 100% of that dollar would be all of it. If I start breaking it down into quarters and nickels and dimes and pennies, those would be percentages, portions of that dollar, right? So if we can understand that concept, then we'll start dealing with these questions a lot easier. Another thing that can help us is when we're trying to set up math equations with percents. We have to remember how to convert percentages into decimals, right? And how to convert decimals into percents, right? So to do that, we have a decimal point. We're either going to move it to the left or to the right 2 places, right? So if we move something to the left 2 places, that's dividing. If we move something to the right 2 places, that's multiplying by 100. So I won't give you too much because you should know this, but this will get the wheels turning, knowing how to move your decimal point to the left or to the right to change from decimals to percents or vice versa. Also, over 100, right? So this can be represented as a fraction as well. You may not need that for any of these problems, but just know that when we're dealing with percents, we can deal with percents, we can deal with decimals, we can deal with fractions, and they're all still part of 100, right? Now for question 3, we're dealing with projected endpoint growth. The organization anticipates a 2.8% increase in endpoint devices next year due to new hires and system expansion. How many total endpoints should the organization expect next year, given there are 49,572 endpoints this year? Remember, they want you to round this one to the nearest endpoint. Usually when they're dealing with something like an endpoint, with an endpoint, let's say a laptop, right? You can't have half a laptop or 94% of a laptop. So they're always going to ask you to round to the nearest endpoint so you can have a whole number. That's usually the case when we're dealing with tangible items, right? So this problem here, when you look at what they're asking, consider yourself in a restaurant. You paid $25 for a meal. The service was pretty good, so you're going to give a tip. How would you do that in your mind? The tip is something extra that you're paying for the service, right? So you're paying more than the $25 by a percentage, right? You want to give a 10% tip, 8%. So you would, take that percentage and then put that together to get the whole package to the service, right? So if you think along those lines, you'd have tremendous success dealing with this projected endpoint growth question. And then a reverse percent analysis is if we think of the same concept in reverse. Instead of me thinking it was exceptional service and I'm paying extra for it on top of, my $25 bill, I didn't like the service. It was horrible. I wish I could pay less if possible, if that were a thing, or a reverse tip, if you will, right? So that would be similar to what we have here. And improved detection tools reduced the number of endpoints flagged this year by 3.8% compared to last year. This year's 17,750 endpoints required patching. Approximately how many endpoints required patching last year, right? So last year, 3.8% less than this year. So think about what we did up here and do it in the reverse, and you should be fine for that, right? And those are pretty much getting you thinking about how to deal with percentages as they relate to different amounts and different scenarios. But these following questions are more of an essay-based question based on, the scenario that we just experienced with the malware outbreak. So for this one, you definitely want to use the internet, because I don't expect you to know this stuff off the top of your head at all by any means. So use the internet, find an article written by an author who supports centralized patch management or coordinated incident response during malware outbreaks. Summarize the author's key points in 2 to 4 complete sentences. Use your own words for that part. Don't copy and paste. I want your own words in here. You're going to 2 or 3 sentences in there about this scenario. Do a little bit of research. To be honest, if you use AI, it doesn't help you much because you're not really doing the research. But I don't care, to be honest, because they're going to give you an answer. You still can read it. This is something that is relevant to the exercise. So either way that you get the information, I'm more concerned with that you get something so that you can answer the question, right? So I'm not going to be a stickler on where you get the information from, but try to do a little bit of research. There's tons of articles about this out there. And question 6 is pretty much you're going to find the same thing, but against centralized patches. So you have the favoring decentralized or department level control. Same thing, 2 to 4 sentences using your own words, finding an article supporting that. Now, as far as centralized and decentralized, what that even means is I'll give you scenarios so we can understand what we're dealing with here. We just had an outbreak. There's malware. We have a company, and we have one company that supports centralized, right? So that company will have like a single command authority. You know, patches are going to be rolled out uniformly. Everybody's on the same page. They follow the same playbook. You have your IT, finance, and you got a SOC department. All of them are going to follow the same instructions from one centralized organization and or department, really. And then everybody gets patched according to that playbook. Now, you might have the same situation, but this is decentralized, right? A department level. Every individual department would decide on their own pretty much how they're going to patch everything. The response speed is going to vary based on that. You know, it's more flexible, but it's a little harder to coordinate if the malware outbreak is rampant and fast, because everybody has to figure out, you know, what they're going to do. So that same IT, finance, and SOC department, the IT might patch everything right away, right? But the SOC, you know, they're more focused on like alerts and monitoring. So, you know, they're not worried about patching. They're putting things in the sandbox and trying to analyze stuff. Where you might have the finance, they're going to delay patching because, you know, they don't want downtime as a finance department. Everything has to run smoothly. So they might delay patches until they find out more or less what's going on from the IT department. HR might not know what's going on. They have no idea. So they're just going to sit there and wait. So you see what I'm saying? That type of situation may not be ideal. It may work fine for a company because that's how they operate, but this is the research that I want you to pretty much do. Get some articles on companies that support centralized patch management, some that do not, and then, you know, get the pros and the cons and get to jotting down some information in here. And that's pretty much the lab. And then you submit this, you email it to me. I will correct everything, send it back to you, and you'll get credit for the lab. So this is pertaining to the exercises that we did this week. So the malware outbreak lab is from Unit 1, Week 2. Good luck on the lab. I hope that helped you out. If you have any questions, like I said, reach out to me and I'll see what I can do to help you out.